We're excited to welcome to the show the host of Way of Champions podcast, John O'Sullivan. John, thanks for coming back, joining us once again.
Oh man, it's great to be on, and we're just doing some good catching up here in the sports world, and excited for a conversation about sports and life.
Yeah, and I mean the big conversation is about the new book, which I have my copy here. I've got all sorts of dog ears and lots of my wife gets mad at writing books. She thinks it's like sacrilege, but I wrote all over your book, so I apologize. But
I do the same thing, man. My books are all dog-eared, underlined, highlighted notes, and my wife's like, "Why are you doing that? You're ruining the book." I'm like, "Because that's how I remember stuff."
It's something about the coaching in us. I guess if you're reading like a fiction book, it's you got to protect like a Hemingway. You can't do that. But
yeah,
coaching books, they're meant to be explored and and just taken to another levels.
I think so too.
But the concept, I think, it's one that's, I mean, I think it's an undervalued, underappreciated, underrated in all sorts of phases. But I guess just first, what drew you to wanting to cover that concept, and why this book?
I mean, a couple of reasons, right? So number one, I'd done books for parents and books for coaches, and I do a lot of team development work. And in the team development workspace, one of the things we do a lot is read books together as teams. And so I'm always getting asked, and there's great books out there that we've gone through, but Jerry and I were like, well, we do this stuff all the time. We know kind of what we think is best for teams, things to focus on, what are the main issues. I mean, he's been at it for so long. And so we said, why don't we write that book? And and I think all the time, I mean, this as well, people are told be a great teammate, but then they're not taught how to be a great teammate. Well, what exactly does that look like? What does that mean? Where are the areas that I'm good at it, and where are the areas that I'm not? And then we have, society, which just bombards kids, especially, with terrible messages, right? The message you're constantly getting is it's all about me, get fame, get my likes, turn the attention on me. The youth sports system does that, right? I got to get the stats, I got to score the points, I got to score the goal, so I get recruited. It's like this zero-sum game. And then they get to college and the coach is like, sacrifice for the team, and they don't even know what that means. Right. So we're hoping to sort of jumpstart that, and it's been a great launch of the book. And the best part has been a lot of coaches who we have coaches who follow us who just did bulk orders right away, but for me right now, it's every day there's a couple like, I got your book, read it, we need 20, like, we're doing this season. And that's why we wrote the book.
Yeah. And those are always, I don't know, I think of books like Legacy, Chop Wood, Carry Water, just that you're like always looking for that one that's going to connect with your team. That I think, and also there's some of these books get a little academic or coachy, and it's like just for you as a coach. But this one, the way you guys wrote it, it's bite-sized pieces, the chapters, there's lots of stories. You can read a chapter quickly. I think it's very appealing to, even a college athlete who doesn't have as much time, or reading isn't their favorite thing to do. So I think that's why it is a great team read, and I think coaches should do it as a team.
We were constantly like shorten the chapter, right? Yeah. Like it was written with that avatar in mind, the high school athlete, the college athlete, and this idea of like, some people might sit down and read the whole thing through, or it's just, hey, it's something for your team captains to pick up, and or the coach, read a chapter to your team and have a little guided discussion once a week, right? And it's 15 minutes, and it just sharpens the focus, sharpens the competitiveness. There's a bunch of chapters you could just once a week with your leadership group, right? That we'll just go through each of these and turn kids into better leaders. And so that was definitely the design, was that chapters, 2-3 pages, questions at the end, a good story with hopefully an athlete or something they could relate to. And so it was really fun to write.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know, Jerry Lynch, who's works with the podcast with you and has written a ton of books. Um, I know you've written a couple of books as well. I know you guys have done it on your own, but I'm curious how, I guess, you brought these principles of being a teammate into this collaboration of writing a book together.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny, everything we talk about in the book, we had to live it out ourselves. And what's funny is, you know, like, so here's the funny backstory of the book. Jerry and I had talked a couple years ago about writing it, and then COVID hit, and actually, we went and we started doing these online coaching courses and some other stuff, and it's just not great timing. But we kept the podcast going, we kept getting all this really good stuff, and so finally in last fall, we sort of each had a break in our schedule where we could do some writing, and so we outlined probably to start 20 topics, right? 20 chapters, and then we split them up and said, okay, go write. And then I put it down and I went about my life. And like 7 days later, Jerry sends me 50 pages and he's like, all right, here you go. And I was like, I hadn't typed a single letter, and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh, awesome, Jerry, I'll have stuff for you in a second. I started getting up at like 3:30 in the morning and writing for a couple of hours every day. And so it was this great team collaboration of ideas, and then him reading my chapters and I'm reading his, and we need this, we need that, you bring in an editor, so it's really, I mean, it was us picking each other up on our bad days when we were busy or less focused, and making, I constantly felt accountable to Jerry, like I got to get my stuff done because he got his stuff done. And as you know, that's what great teams do, and that's what great teammates do. We don't show up every day at 100%. And on those days when we're not there, that's when we need our teammates to be like, come on, I know it's not your best day, but you can still give what you're capable of today.
Yeah. I feel like Jerry's like the Kobe Bryant of writing. Like, yeah, I'm going to be in the gym at 3:30. What's going on? Like, where are you at?
Yeah, exactly.
He's setting a high bar, a high standard. I
He's
can imagine
amazing.
that pushes you to want to match him. And that collaboration, I just imagine, just makes you so much better than just sitting there alone. I think writing can be very solitary, staring at a screen, but to have someone who's pushing you to be better, someone who's giving you feedback. I mean, I think that's why the book came out so good, because the two of you got to.
I think my brother appreciated it as well, because he didn't have to proof everything and go through it and sign off on it. Like, he just got to read the final product.
That's awesome. Well, the book's broken down into 3 parts. You have connect, compete, and lead are the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So try to go in order as, and I know I could tell when it was, and you guys would mention like if Jerry wrote the chapter, you did. So I tried to keep it more to the ones that my sense was that you wrote them.
It was funny. I was looking at your questions ahead of time. Like, he pretty much got them all. Good for you.
Well, as I was reading it, I was like, yeah. And as I've gotten in, like, follow along with you through the podcast and Jerry, kind of hear the voice, like, yeah, I could see, it wasn't always 100% clear, but you could see who was maybe leading it. So I think one of the highlights right away, you crush it with this idea of talking about the difference between standards and rules. And maybe you could take us through why you think standards are more important.
Yeah, so in that chapter, I share what I think is a great story, the story of sort of Messiah College men's and women's soccer Division III program out of Pennsylvania that's won, I think, 16 national championships combined between, in the last 20 years or something. And, there's a program, there's no scholarships, there's no things like that. How do you just keep being so successful? And one of their things is sort of, playing to a higher purpose and basically having, high standards and not many rules. And anyone with kids knows, or anyone who coach knows, if you have rules are sort of meant to be broken. They're meant to be tested. Is coach really going to enforce this? Is mom and dad really going to enforce this? Mm-hmm. Versus standards are things to be aspired to, right? Be a great teammate, right? Things like that. Work hard, whatever your team standards are. These are things that, you're pushing yourself to get to. And so it's not a line in the sand to be broken. It's something that you're constantly striving for, and you're holding your teammates accountable for the same. And like we were just saying, you're going to have bad days, but don't let your team down. right? Do the right thing. These are things that we all control and we're all capable of achieving. And so a lot of teams have all these rules, or they have like way too many standards, and then no one knows what they are and they don't hold anyone accountable for them either. So the work we do, we really try to say like, okay, what are the things that you are all willing to hold yourselves accountable for
Mm,
and each other accountable for? Because what happens a lot, especially I see on college teams, sometimes, and also high school teams, is like your team leaders will set out all these rules and then they think they don't apply to them because they're a senior.
mhm.
Right. So I've been here for 3 years. I've been here 4 years. And so therefore, this is what everyone else should do, but I'm going to do my own thing. Right.
Yeah,
And so it's like, no, these are the things we all agree to.
yeah,
We all are going to do these. And yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing. And people tend to enjoy that.
yeah, yeah. It's so much more proactive. Something I love that. Something to aspire to. Um, I guess, and I know you work with different levels. You work youth level, high school, and then you work even with college. And I don't know if it depends on the level, but do you see the standards as something that come from the coach? Like, here's our team standards, or is it co-created or is it just a leadership council? How do you see that being created?
I think it's a great question. And I think that really depends upon the coach and the program and things like that. There's programs, coaches we've worked with like Anson Dorrance at Carolina, whose standards have just evolved over the years, right? And they've added some to things that were there in the beginning, but it's just, the Carolina way, right? That's what they do. They've won 22 national championships. It's working, right? I think one of the big things is, as a coach, right? It's your program, it's your job, right? So the things that give you energy and joy in coaching should be part of your program, right?
Mm,
Like, it's still you're still in charge. I mean, you're still
mhm.
the one who's going to get fired if it doesn't go well. So
Right.
the inmates don't get to run the entire asylum. Like, you
Yeah.
still have to have some sort of things. So I think sort of co-creating them, like, hey, these are the things that this program is always going to be about, because
Mhm.
they're the things that give me the energy to get up every morning and coach and prepare. And then what makes your team unique, right? Do you want to add one or two to this? Now,
Yeah.
I found with the kids that I coach, when we go through this exercise, it's pretty clear what matters to John O'Sullivan, which is like, number one, joy. Like, this is supposed to be fun. We get to
Mhm.
play a sport. And number two, I really demand a high level of competing. And then number three, family, right? We treat each other really, really well. And that's what I always bring. And then I ask the team, is there anything else that you guys want to bring that really matters to you? And sometimes they say that's good. And sometimes they say, well, we think this matters. The college teams, sometimes we give the leadership group a little more say in what it is, or just, how they want to sort of design these things. But what I've just seen too many times is people who have fancy signs on the wall that
Right.
mean absolutely nothing.
Wallpaper. Yeah.
It's just wallpaper.
Yeah.
It's not, no, A, most people couldn't tell you what they are,
Yeah.
and B, they certainly don't live up to them,
Yeah.
right? So you might as well just tear it down,
Right.
because you're not doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, I mean, I get the appeal, like why rules are so traditional and used, because, oh, they break the rule, then I can enforce a consequence, right? Okay, you can't play the next game, and now they don't break the rule again. So that's, I mean, why coaches are drawn to it. So when it comes to a standard, if someone's not living up to the standard, how do I enforce it? How do I make sure it's not a repeated action? Yeah, I guess, how do you go about that to make sure we live up to it?
You know, like, here's the thing with rules is it takes any sort of creativity or flexibility or humanity out of the coach athlete relationship, right? Because if you have a strict rule about practice attendance or
Mm,
something,
mhm,
right? And like, my son has like a kid on his high school team who, is part of a big family. The kid during school works 40 hours a week to help his family pay rent and support and feed his
mhm,
brothers and sisters. he doesn't make everything.
Right.
Would you really say, oh, this kid's not invested in the team?
Yeah.
Or make him make a choice between the team and his family? I mean, that's an easy choice, and you're going to lose him to the team. It's not the kid's fault,
Right.
And so that kind of thing, right? So you get that understanding. Now, when someone is, breaks a big standard or consistently does it, like as that coach, that you're having that meeting, you're connecting, you're having that conversation. Why is this happening? But I think most teams get it, right? Like, hey, so-and-so is going through a tough time at home. Her dad's got cancer. His parents are getting divorced. We can bring a little empathy to that. And he or she can still meet the standard,
Mm-hmm.
even if they fall short once in a while because of what's going on in their life.
Yeah. Such an opportunity to empathize, get to know your players better, not pass judgment, not treat everyone's different in different circumstances. So it seems like I mean, I'm all in on it. But I know,
Yeah.
coaches are so used to different ways. So fun to kind of challenge it. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah. I mean, we had a great conversation for our conference. Phil Jackson presented, and he's just talking about coaching Dennis Rodman. They knew right off the bat that whatever the standards were, Dennis was not going to meet them.
Different standards.
But in his own way, he would do things that would make him one of the, Phil said he's one of the most intelligent, most prepared players I have ever coached in my life. Even though he couldn't show up 2 hours before or whatever, like he did things his own ways, but we knew that going in, and we asked the team leaders, like, can we absorb Dennis? Cause he'll help us win a championship. It's just not going to be, it's just not going to be, a seamless integration into what everyone else is doing. And, Jordan and Pippen were like, yeah, he'll help us win. We can make this work.
Yeah. That's a great coach, someone who's adaptable and who's able to work with multiple personalities. And that's where standards allow that flexibility. Rules are so rigid, and it's you're done.
And it's the right player. I mean, Dennis Rodman, for all his things, was incredibly talented, right? And whatever, like what I see is too many younger kids, younger athletes not meeting the standard. And because they have some ability, the parents or the coaches are going, yeah, it's okay. Right. But it's like, I have these conversations with these kids who, are looking at college as a stepping stone to the pros. And yet they don't defend well. They don't chase on defense. They don't press, whatever it is, right? The things that they control. And I'm like, what makes you think that you're good enough that a professional coach is going to say, this guy is so incredibly talented on the offensive side of the ball that he doesn't need to defend? Lionel Messi can do that. You can't. They're building the team around Messi. They're not building it around you. Yeah. So you better add this to your game if you truly have aspirations of playing at the next level.
Right. Well, that's great. I think we could probably spend a whole hour on that topic, but I think you covered some great ground. Another great chapter within the part 1 of Connect was you talked about this idea, and I think there's a lot of these like sticky concepts you use where it's an analogy or a story, which is just always resonates so much better. But you talk about teammates who are thermostats and who are thermometers. So could you break that down for us?
Yeah, so I think we understand, right? A thermometer is something that takes the temperature of the room. And it just, whatever's there's your thermometer telling you. Whereas a thermostat adjusts it, raises the temperature, it lowers the temperature. And so many kids, so many teams just become a collection of thermometers, right? When we're having a good day, we all have a good day. And when we're having a bad day, we're all having a bad day. But I think, as Jerry and I said, a champion teammate is someone who knows how to raise and lower the temperature. That on the days when we're not getting it done, they have the courage and the respect of their teammates to raise the temperature, to call people out, to hold people accountable, to demand the right behaviors. And by the same token, when the team is getting too hot-headed, too fired up, angry at officials or referees, they can lower the temperature a little bit. They can get people back and refocused. And yeah, like the story in the chapters about Carlos Puyol, who is the captain of FC Barcelona, right? So he's the captain on a team with Messi and Xavi and Iniesta and all these incredible players, yet he was the guy who sort of was in charge of, and there's these great videos of him like stopping teammates from over celebrating a goal and getting them refocused after a foul or whatever. And he's just a great thermostat. And it's why he was the captain of all those incredibly successful teams and why he's a legend in that club. Because he wasn't the best player,
Right.
but he was their best leader.
Yeah. I'm thinking of, it's a great, I love the analogy. I'm thinking of sometimes the player who thinks they're the best thermostat maybe doesn't always do it in the right situations. I guess I'm thinking that there might be the player who doesn't feel empowered to do it, and as a coach we see, okay, this is someone who does have that awareness of the room, connection with players. So how do you recommend coaches empowering and maybe even identifying like who is that person? And not that it has to be one person, but yeah, I guess how do we empower and how do we discover who those thermostats could be?
Well, I think there's lots of ways, and this really bleeds into sort of the leadership section as well. But, how do you identify and then develop your leaders? Now, one of the worst things you can do is say, okay, these are our seniors or juniors, these are our leaders. And then when people come juniors and seniors, then we'll figure out who's the leaders.
Yeah.
Like you want to start cultivating that when people first get on campus and giving them a chance. We had a great conversation with Jenny Levy from UNC Lacrosse, and she's like, they do leadership meetings every 2 weeks and they have their core leadership crew. And then every class gets to decide who wants to attend on our behalf. And so they can alternate it every week, or they can send the same person every week. And it's just, I think it's just a great way. And then you see who takes that and brings it back versus who just was, that was nice to be in the room, but I don't really care. And so I think intentionally developing your leaders. And so like I was just with a Big Ten college, and I have a couple teams there, and I worked through the leadership group. And one of the things that I asked the leadership group was, what are all of you think, what's your role? Right? What is it like? How do you see yourself in relationship to all of your teammates? Right. Well, and I asked them to define it. And then what was great was, they saw it. Then I asked their teammates, is that how you see them? Right. Because like someone would say, I'm the one who makes everyone uphold the standard. And yeah, you know what? I'm pretty good at, talking one-on-one to the teammate who's down. And, I'm the one who I don't say a lot, but I bring, I compete every day. So people see themselves in that. Then I, get their teammates to see them. But then I have the coaches in the room and I say, hey, how do you see John? How do you see Billy? How do you see whatever? Right. And that's a really powerful moment, because that's a lot of times the justification for, this is how I see myself. Oh, and my coach sees me this way as well. Then, yeah, now I feel like I can do this. And so we sit there and say, did we cover all the bases? Do we have the social stuff down? Do we have the practice environment? Who's the emotional leader on the bench? Right? In soccer and lacrosse, you have twice as many people sitting out as you do in the game. Right. So like, who's the emotional leader there? Keeping those people focused and engaged and whatever. So, so to go back to your question, right? Like, hey, I see you, John, as the person who really is this great thermostat. Like, you have an amazing ability to raise the level when we're not doing well, and also to tone it down when we're a little too hyped. And I think that's an incredible thing that you can do for our team this year, is just be that thermostat, right? Now that kid, if he or she sees it in themselves and it's been validated by their coach, they're probably going to run with it.
Yeah, that's great. Quick sidebar, when you said Big Ten, I was like, isn't it
the Big 22?
How many? I don't even know what school it would be at. You can't narrow it down. But I guess thinking along those lines, have you noticed as you've observed it, are the best thermostats, I guess this is generalizing, are they more often the star player, more often the bench player, more often a role player? Like, have you seen any themes in terms of who the best thermostats are?
I think what they usually are is that they usually end up becoming team captains. And, there's a wonderful book got by a guy named Sam Walker called The Captain Class, came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And what he identified, right, is these people who become captains of these championship teams. A lot of times we pick them based on, they're our best player.
Mm-hmm.
But what he found is that the captains of the best teams, like a Puyol, like a Bill Russell, things like that, they're the ones who are willing to do everything that others were not.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they were the person who got rebounds and blocks and played great defense in basketball. They were, the Puyol, the tackler, the emotional leader, things like that for Barcelona. And so, I think it depends on your team also and what it needs. But oftentimes they're not your star All-American. Like sometimes that happens. And if that happens, man, you're in. Like if when your best leaders, when the people who uphold and live the standards are also your most talented athletes,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a good season.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But that, as that doesn't happen a lot. Yeah. Right. So it's finding that blend. And sometimes that super talented person just is too inwardly focused to really be a leader. Don't lump that on them. It's not really their thing.
Right. Yeah, Michael Jordan needed Steve Kerr, right? That's way different roles, and allows Jordan to be Jordan, or Kobe gets to be Kobe, because they can play their roles and not. I feel like you're stretched too far, maybe, if you're someone like that who's having to think about too many different things.
Yeah, for sure, and everyone's different, right? I think in the youth space, part of our job is to develop leadership, right? We want to see it emerge, but we also want to give the people the tools to do it. Mm-hmm. And so, whereas at the college level or at the pro level, it's like, all right, like who's emerged, right? And usually those people they come through, right? They were the captain of their high school team, the college team, and now they're the captain of their pro team as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think I agree with all of it. Everybody's going to have a chance. There's going to be an opportunity, even if it's not your natural tendency, but everyone's going to have an opportunity to emerge. There's a chance to be a thermostat at some point in the season. Maybe people are doing it more often. And I agree, at the youth level, we should be giving everyone opportunities to fulfill those roles, and to find ways to understand the room, read the room, help the people around you be better.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just think that's the art of coaching right there, is how do I blend all of this in? But hey, if I'm a Division I coach and I'm in fall season, right, we're doing leadership development across numerous players, but also like who has emerged, like who has shown a willingness and an ability to lead.
Right. Okay, so moving into part 2, which was compete. As chapter 9, you talk about the 10-80-10 rule, which I think was from business, where 10% of people on teams will do everything right, 80% are kind of average, will do just enough, and 10% are more disruptive. And it seems like it's appealing and also common. I know I've done it a lot, where you focus on the main problem, or what that's what's the sore thumb, as you see the people who are maybe messing it up. But you seem to go about it the other way, where you're saying we should focus, I think you said, on the top 10%. So yeah, I guess what's your recommendation with that breakdown?
So this idea, right, is that in any group of people, there's a percentage who do everything. They show up early, they stay late, they go above and beyond, they get done what needs to get done. And then there's a percentage who do the opposite, right? They don't buy into the standards. They show up late, they don't put out their best effort. But most people are in the middle, mm-hmm. right? And they have good days and they have bad days. And certainly as a coach, right, it's like it's so easy to just get all your energy sucked away by those bottom 10%ers, right? Especially when one of them is your most talented player, which happens sometimes, right? Because
Yeah.
that player has been able to coast his or her whole life. And now all of a sudden they're at a level where they can't coast anymore, but they've never developed the behaviors, to really train correctly. So it's not saying that you abandon them, but you can't spend all your energy on them. And what you're better off doing in this sort of idea, which I really resonate with, is who are the people in that middle 80% who are there some days and not others, who might have the biggest impact on your season, right? And every team that I have ever worked with, I always ask them that. And right off the bat, they will 1, 2, 3 names. Like if this person became a top 10 percenter, if we went from top 10 to top 20 or top 30, right? Would it help us be successful? Would it help us win? Would we be better? I've never had a team not understand that. And so then when we say is, okay, we've got these 3 kids and oh, look, we have 3 captains. You're each assigned one of them. Your responsibility is to turn them in, to a top 10 percenter today or this week. And then we'll reconvene and see how that went. And I tell the story in the book how one of my teams, right, they identified this young woman and, and they got her into the fold and they understood it. And she became an All-American, right? Division I All-American. And it was like, but she was in and out, some good days, some bad days. And there was this intentional effort to engage her every day. And then it's like, okay, John, you have this guy. He's your responsibility. At the end of the week, if I'm the coach and I say, John, your job was to go get Joey every day this week. Joey was horrible in practice this week. What's going on? Right. And if you say, well, I did this and this, and he is just not there, coach, I tried everything. Okay, fair enough. At least we tried. Right. Should someone else take him? Maybe someone else has a better shot at it versus if we just say, hey, these 3 players are going to make us better. All right, cool. And then we're done. Well, who's accountable for that now?
Yeah.
Right. So we add some accountability to it. And, if all of a sudden 30% of your roster is that top doing everything, it becomes less comfortable to be in the middle. It becomes way less comfortable to kind of, show up not focused or, be lazy in practice or lazy in the classroom or whatever it is, because you stand out. Right. And so now it's sort of this peer pressure of this isn't for everyone. And if you can't do it, maybe it's not a good fit for you. And it's hard work, but that's more powerful than the coach cracking down on a player, right? When they feel accountable to their teammates and they're not getting it done and everyone else is, and they're slipping down the pecking order, unless there's something else going on, usually they get on board.
And then, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I love how you empower the peer feedback, the peer-to-peer. Yeah, I agree. It's so much more impactful. But then what about as this 80% is sliding up, does the 10% get further away, or what do you do with that bottom 10%? Like, how do you make sure that they don't get lost in the weeds?
I mean, some do, some don't. You're still paying attention to them, but you're saying, hey, you bring this. Okay, so let's take the player who's bottom 10% and not playing. You're not playing. You want to, but I've never seen you stay after practice. I've never seen you do an extra weight room session. Do you meet with the sports psychologist that we provide for you? No. Well, why do you think things are going to change? Right. And then by the same token, now, if it's one of your most talented people, like, how do you attach that to their future goals or ambitions? Like, hey, do you want to make a national team? You want to go to Olympics? You want to turn pro? Like, what makes you think that your behaviors today are getting you to that spot? Right? Like, do you notice this? Do you see this? Is this the type of person you want to be? Let's just do it for one day and see how it feels. Right. And this happens on every level, from youth to the pros. Right. That's that dance of the coach. How do I engage someone who doesn't want to be engaged or has never had to engage every single day in their lives because of their ability?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's Okay, I'm gonna move. I had one more
Yeah.
left, but I'm gonna.
Yeah.
No, that's what I was thinking. I wanted to ask it at the beginning, with this percent thing. Like, how do you see it? Like, are you saying the top 10%? Is it a combination of talent? Is it these qualities like hard work, like being a great teammate? Is it a combination of all that? Could you be the least talented player and still be in the top 10%? Like, how do you come up with that concoction of
Yeah.
these
And,
things?
and recognizing, right, like 10% is not an exact number, right?
Right,
Some
right.
groups that number's really, really high, and some groups it's less. So no, you don't have to be one of the most talented. And in all the groups that I work with, we always have someone in the leadership group who might not play as much.
Mm-hmm.
Because if someone who doesn't play very much or play at all, exhibits all of the behaviors, right? The hard work, the positivity, the joy, the grit, whatever it is, and they don't play, it's a pretty good example for other people.
Mm,
Like, that person never gets a minute, and yet they can do this and you can't be bothered,
mm-hmm.
right? So I think, what that 10-80-10 for me is really about behaviors. What are the agreed upon behaviors in our group that we've agreed to hold each other accountable for, and that we agree if we exhibit these things, we will perform our very best,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if we get that, right, if we do that, so and because the thing is, I control that,
Mm-hmm.
right? That has nothing to do with,
Talent.
how high I
Yeah.
jump, or, my technical level or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these behaviors I own.
Yeah.
And so there's no excuse to not do them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's so I think that's where it's really, really powerful.
Right. Yeah, that's really important clarification to make sure, like, that it's behavior based. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to you had another story is about Colby College and the lacrosse team, and again, that this was what makes the book so great is all these stories that I think any high school team, college team can relate to a lot of these. Like, oh, we've been in a scenario similar to that. How did we respond? But yeah, could you take us through that story of this lacrosse team and their conference tournament?
Yeah, for sure. And so Colby College, so I got into the team development thing through Jerry, right? And Jerry's been at this for a couple of decades. And so a lot of athletes that he worked with and won national championships with and stuff are now coaching.
Mm,
Right. And so then they come back to Jerry and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of out of it now, but John will take your team or whatever, because they remember their time as an athlete. Like, this was, and you get into coaching and you spend a decade probably looking for the magic practice, and then you realize it's not there. And then you realize it's the relationships and it's the culture and it's all those things that feed into it. And so these coaches, come and like, yeah, you know what, Jerry and Way of Champions methodology, like that was a big part of it.
mm,
So anyway, Colby was the first team I started working with. The coach Karen there had been a player at Maryland when Jerry worked with the team, won national championships there. And so she wanted to sort of tweak the culture of Colby lacrosse, women's lacrosse. And yeah, that first year, we really sort of set some really good standards, and this wasn't like a team that was going from bad to great. Like, they were already very good, but how can we do a little bit more? Hadn't won a conference championship in a decade or so. And so we set these values, and it was interesting because we started the season 0-2 or 0-3, right? Because we always go on the road and play really, really tough teams. But we knew we were on the right track. We were competing against the best in the country. We were just kind of finding our feet. And so we kept the focus, and we reeled off like 15 wins in a row, including we won the NESCAC conference for the first time in a decade or so, which was amazing. But we had to go on the road for that conference tournament and beat Middlebury on their own field, and they're sort of the preeminent Division III women's college lacrosse program. And so we were like the number 2 seed going into the NCAA tournament. So we were supposed to host and basically be home until the Final Four. Well, lo and behold, there was like, Colby and is in Waterville, Maine. It's not a big area. Well, all the hotels were full, so all of a sudden we were stuck, right? And we couldn't host anymore. So we got sent back on the road to Middlebury, right? And it was just like, oh my goodness, now we have to go play against one of the best teams in the country again on the road again. What did we do? And so we really, put the focus on every team can start letting other people write their story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's your story? And come up with all the reasons why you shouldn't be successful. And I felt in that moment we had to stop that. Like, we had to write our own story in that moment, to not make excuses so we could throw the game away and just, the people at the school, the NCAA, this, that, everything. It was just like, blah, right? And so anyway, we went and played an unbelievable game against Middlebury and lost by a goal. Right. And it was probably a year that we were really in a great spot to potentially win a national championship. And, it was funny, like this year actually as well, like we played them 3 times and lost all 3. But we lost to them in the Elite 8 in the NCAA tournament this year, I think by 2 goals or 3 goals. And then they went and won their Final 4 games and the final by 10, 12 goals. Like, we were the only close game they played, and it was hard. Is like, here we are, we made the Elite 8, but we just couldn't get over the Middlebury hump in a year where they were an incredible team.
Yeah. Hearing that story just like feels so unfair. I could see how any team, you're going to first react, and we have these natural emotions, and it's easy to fall into this victim mindset. This is unfair. It's not right. And I think lots of teams could hold on to that. But my guess is the work you guys had done, you working with them all year, and you in the book, you talk about respond versus react. I guess, what are the things, not only just in that moment, but that you guys had done throughout the year to allow them to go out and not focus on the unfairness, but to go compete and to go, be themselves?
And that idea, right, that we don't react, we respond, is a really important thing, right? Like, we respond, which means our training and our character chooses our course of action. And there's this leadership guy, Tim Kite. He has this formula. He calls it E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. And, your response to an event has a far greater effect on the outcome than usually the event itself. And yet, if we react to the bad call, whatever, like what we talked about was, well, we could sit here and make all these excuses and complain about, all the people that screwed us over. What does that get us?
Mm-hmm.
It's not getting us any more prepared to face the reality in front of us, which is we have to go play Middlebury again, right? Or whatever. And so that's one of the things we talk about a lot with our teams, is we have to go from reacting to responding. As an individual and as a collective. And you see that in, there's bad calls in your sport all the time, right? And it's like, are you gonna lose the next 3 points because of that bad call, or are you just gonna move past it and move on?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a great quick mantra to remind all of us of. So much easier to react. Responding takes thoughtfulness and care and leads to better outcomes. You had mentioned your job in getting to work with teams and oversee teams and basically do like coach development, program development. It seems like, to me, the best job in the world. That sounds so awesome. But hearing you talk about it just made me think like, oh, I'd love to do that if I was doing it. But no, I guess I was wondering, as you observe it, and it sounded like you said the things that coaches and programs need to do better first is more on the culture side, the leadership side. Are you ever seeing like practice design where you're like, oh, they're way far off? Are those all connected? Like, I guess, where do you see as you're coming into programs? Like, what most often are you emphasizing or working on with them?
Well, I don't, per the NCAA, right? When you're an outside consultant, you can't do anything technically or tactically.
Sure.
And to be honest, most of the sports that I work with, I don't know anything about them anyway. So there's no way I could help you with volleyball or, someone with lacrosse or field hockey or anything like that, like, so that's not it. So, I really work very closely with the coaches on sort of what's going well and what needs work, and then identifying leadership values. And I just do a lot of one-on-one calls with the coaches where this as a college coach, like when something's not going well, like who do you turn to?
Yeah.
Right. You don't like you're not going to call the people down the street who you compete against because they're like, sweet, twist the knife. Right. And some universities are wonderful. Right. And so, like Jenny at North Carolina, she's like, my office is next door to Anson Dorrance. He won 22 national championships. I could call Roy Williams at basketball, ask his advice. It's like, but other universities are not like that. They're really siloed, and, you don't even get to talk to the football coach or the basketball coach or whatever. And so, like, who do I talk to? And so what Jerry and I do, and other people who do this, is sort of like, I've been in the trenches. I've been a coach. I do all this work. I'm just sort of this mostly neutral third party to bounce ideas off of. How do you see this situation? Right. And some coaches might just have me and some have a couple of me's, and great, and it's just, how do you see this? And it helps them process the decision, whether it's a player personnel issue, whether it's a team culture issue, whether it's, a lot of them now go through this in recruiting, right? Is this athlete going to fit the culture?
Right.
And, it doesn't matter how talented he is or she is. If they're going to ruin the culture, then we don't really want them.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's fun. It's awesome to be 3,000 miles away sometimes and watch him win a championship. And it sucks to be 3,000 miles away and watch him win a championship. Like whenever I leave campus, I'm sad.
Yeah.
Like I'm sad that I'm not going to see these kids for a while in person, even though I might see them via Zoom, even though I might do some one-on-ones. I'm just like, because I love to be in a college coach. I love the day-to-day of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, to not see the day-to-day growth is kind of sad.
Yeah. But to be a part of so many teams, teams are special that you get to be a part of so many. And I'm picturing your example, who do coaches go to when so many of us are siloed? It's like, you just lose lots of sleep and toss and turn. And then other coaches get to talk to Anson Dorrance or talk to you. It seems like that's just even just from allowing to get stuff off your chest and having someone listen. And that's just so impactful and helpful. So
yeah, very much so. Very much. And again, a lot of times I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, right? Like you got it. You knew this already.
Yeah.
It just, and sometimes I'm just reconfirming, yeah, I see it the same way. So yeah, it's fun for sure. I really do enjoy it.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to I'll go one more. I know we're taking a lot of your time. I have like 10 more questions here, but let's see if I pick one more good one.
We'll have to do part two someday.
Exactly. Yeah. Or everyone's got to get the book. That's the reality. So chapter 12, this one stuck out to me a lot. Building the capacity to endure was the title. And you talk about the value of confidence and positive action. And over what I hear the most from lots of players, and kind of saying there's almost this crutch of I have to have confidence and positive thinking. So why is it worth valuing more competence over confidence?
Well, I think, when you think about this, right, and parents tell a coach, oh, you need to give my kid confidence, or I need to give them confidence, or like confidence is earned. Right? How could you possibly feel confident about running a marathon unless you trained and developed the competence to do so? Right? Like if you got off the couch and said, I'm going to go run a marathon, I wouldn't feel confident. I'd be like, I'm not going to make it 5 miles because I haven't trained for it. Right. But so a lot of people want confidence first and then think they develop competence, but no, it's the other way around. So you got to put in the hours and you got to put in the work. And then what you often see on display, this psychologist, Jonah Oliver, said this to us. It was one of my favorite interviews we've done. He said, you see Steph Curry draining threes, and then they interview him after and they go, "You looked really confident out there." And he's like, "No, you looked really competent out there." Right. And so we confuse these things. And so, it's all about getting the reps, right? That you've got to get reps technically and tactically, but also psychosocial reps in overcoming adversity, dealing with bad calls, all this sort of stuff, so that you learn to respond. And so we want to build that in to practice as often as possible. I just, like, I thought about, like, I when I worked in the university, one of the basketball coaches, at the end of practice, when they'd be shooting free throws, everyone's at a different basket shooting free throws. That's not really mimicking a one-on-one with 10 seconds left, right?
Right.
But then he would blow his whistle and say, "All right, John, if you make it, practice is over. If you miss it, we run." Right? Now, all of a sudden, there's eyes on you. Your heart rate goes up or whatever. Is that the game? No, but at least it's starting to get it. And so, one of the big things I think is people, like, one of the worst things I see parents do when kids are nervous or scared is tell them, "Don't be scared. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing that, okay, like, this is a good thing. It means that you care. It means that this matters to you. If you weren't nervous, then I'd be right. Every time I get up and give a speech, I'm nervous beforehand, because because I care that it goes well and that I impact people and whatever. Right. But now when that nervousness comes, I'm like, this is great. I feel alive. Right. Welcome to being human. Right. And so, when that athlete has that 3-foot putt to win a tournament, or, serving for game point or whatever it is, you should feel nervous. But what the best people have done is just built the capacity to be like, "I've been here before. I have the ability to do this, and it's good to go." Right now, if you or I were standing over a 3-foot putt to win the Masters, right, my hands would be shaking and whatever. But the guy hitting that putt, he's been there before, right? He's built that capacity to do it, right? And so I think that's, just something that we have to instill in our teams. What are the things that we need to start doing to build that capacity, that in those difficult moments in that tie game, we can do the right things? And what do we need to stop doing that we're doing now that's hurting that? So
yeah. No, it's a great message, and it's a good way to wrap it up. I feel like a lot of the Olympic athletes, professional athletes, college athletes I've talked to, they say they feel nervous, they have doubts, they're unsure of the outcome, but because they've trained it. And I think also when they have, the name of the book, they have a champion teammate supporting them, they have a coach, they have a support staff, like, they know they can go out and be their best, they can live their values, they can compete the way they want to compete, even when they don't feel confident. So I think it all ties together in that message.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think more and more coaches are seeing this and recognizing the importance of, psychosocial elements to every practice, not just a technical and tactical thing, but how are we developing togetherness and belonging and this, mental fortitude and hardiness and all these things, right? And when you're weaving all those things in, your athletes are getting enough reps that now when the game rolls around, it's not like, wow, this is the first time I've been in this situation.
Right. Because you're competent.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great way for coaches to strive for competence, and for players too, and not lean on just confidence. Okay. So, I had another, like I said, 5 questions on lead, but people can go read the book and pick up all the chapters we didn't touch on. And there's so much more, like you said, to build with your team, to read as a team, to read a chapter before practice. There's so many opportunities to use these lessons and take them not just as a theory, but we're going to use this today in training. We're going to use this today in this situation. So that's why the book's so powerful. So where would you say, where's the best way people can get it?
Well, I mean, the hardcover is only available on Amazon. We just released the paperback as well, which will then be an extended distribution. So that will be, if not yet, very soon on Barnes and Noble and Powell's and everywhere else. There is no audio book yet. Coaches always ask, well, where's the audio book? Like, I don't have that yet, man. But this is really a
Easy
work.
read. You don't need an audiobook. It's an easy
And
read.
it's really a workbook too,
Yeah.
right? You're supposed to write in it. Like
Right.
this book, you have permission to write in. The first page, you're supposed to put your name and the name of your team. Like start writing in this book. So it's not really an audiobook, but we'll probably record it anyway. We'll see.
Yeah. What about bulk orders? Do they still go through
Yeah.
that or reach out to you?
Bulk orders, if you want more than 10 books, you can just email me directly, just John, JOHN at changingthegameproject.com. And we give you a nice discount on those as well. And yeah, spend a lot of time filling those these days as people's school sports seasons are kicking off. So it's been a really fun couple of weeks here talking to coaches and just how to use this book and everything. So yeah, a lot of people are excited this fall. Me too.
That's awesome. And then for the podcast, I'd imagine most people who listen to ours are aware of yours, but if you were to maybe highlight a couple, like what would be a couple highlights from the Way of Champions podcast where people could go if they want to get an introduction to it?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some amazing guests. Steve Kerr, like I said, we just had this amazing one that was from our conference with Jenny Levy, multiple time national champion coach. I mean, for those in the volleyball world, we just had Hugh McCutcheon on, right? Olympic gold and silver medalist coach, and incredibly successful, talking about culture and championship behaviors. A lot of things that we talked about today, that podcast was on. So yeah, there's, it's not everything is everyone's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. So I think, search for things that you're interested in and hope I tagged them well.
Yeah, you can't go wrong. I've loved listening, and you cover a wide range of topics, and they're done really well. So it's a great resource for coaches.
Yeah.
And
thanks, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the time. Thanks for making this happen again. We're really honored to have had you. And I hope people go enjoy the book and read it with their teams.
Awesome. Well, John, this was super fun. I really appreciate it. And good luck for you and your upcoming seasons and stuff as well.
Around the corner. We got to start reading the book.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.